Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here at the Dubai International Air Chiefs Conference in Dubai. Our coverage here and at the Dubai Air Show over the coming days is sponsored by FLIR Systems, and we're honored to have with us United States Navy Vice Admiral Chris Lung Aquilino, who is the commander of the United States Fifth Fleet. Sir, thanks very much for spending some time with us.
You're welcome, Vago. Thanks. It's good to see you again, and thanks for spending a little time with me.
Absolutely fantastic. You were the N3, N5 when we last spoke, and the occasion was the extraordinary agreement between the United States Navy, the Japanese Navy, and the Royal Navy for cooperation in the Pacific. You're now the Fifth Fleet Commander. I want to talk a little bit about, very a sparky time over here in this region. A lot of concern about Iran, tensions between some of the Gulf countries and Qatar as well. We've had some of the statements about Hezbollah declaring war on the other countries. A lot of talk about war. From your standpoint, how does that change your dynamic, your planning, your calculation? Because the United States is sort of the security guarantor in the region. Talk to us a little bit about some of the thinking as these tensions sort of rise as the Fifth Fleet Commander.
Yeah, so the region is very complex, and that's not anything I believe I have to tell anyone. What I've found since leaving OpNav and coming out is it changes it's way faster changing today than it has been in the past. So what you knew yesterday is different than what we know today. What we can predict tomorrow is extremely difficult. What I'll say is, as the threats change, the approach has remained the same. So in the design for maintaining maritime superiority, one of the items that the CNO has tasked his fleet commanders with is to deepen and expand partnerships. And I think that's the way we're going after combating these threats. We are better when we operate together. We are better when our like-minded nations come together in order to combat all of these difficult threats, whether they be ballistic missile threats, whether they be explosive boats, whether they be mines, whether they be land attack or surface anti-ship cruise missiles. So the threats are real. And to combat them and to ensure that we can maintain clear sea lines of communication, that we can enable the free flow of commerce throughout the three most critical choke points in this region. The partners operating together is a critical piece. And you see it today here at BIDEC, when you have as many nations as there are combined to voice discussions and to talk about these challenging issues. The fact that we're all sitting together and working towards common solutions is critical, and it really is the way we have to go forward.
There was always concern when in Fifth Fleet regarding the Iranians and Iranian behavior. There have been incidents in the past, including the seizure of personnel, as we saw a few years ago. Talk to us a little bit. Is there a difference in the behavior of the Iranians now? Is there any stepped-up activity or anything you're seeing that concerns you as a fleet commander out here?
Yeah, I haven't seen much change in behavior in the maritime environment. There's been some things recently in the press about support to some of the violent extremist organizations that are doing harm to our partners, and then we take that very seriously. We clearly oppose it, and like I said, the like-minded nations need to come together in order to ensure that all know that is not in accordance with international law, nor is it acceptable to infringe and push those threats on our partners in the area.
From a broader fleet commander perspective, there were the incident report that came out that Admiral Davidson wrote about some of the incidents that happened in the 7th Fleet AOR. The 4 incidents, 2 of which sadly were very deadly, involving Fitzgerald and John S. McCain. As a fleet commander, is that changing some of the standing orders and what you expect of your surface commanders in this very important region?
Yeah, so that illuminated some issues that clearly we need to take seriously. Our condolences go out to those sailors and their families. But I can tell you the first priority I have identified and pushed to my task force commanders is to ensure that we provide the proper oversight and ensure that our forces are manned, trained, equipped, rested, and ready to execute those missions. My task force commanders have taken that on. I can tell you each of my ships have gone out once the report has been released with some additional oversight to ensure that we take a hard look at ourselves and that we are ready to execute those missions. In this area, it is extremely complex. Every mission could potentially be a hostile event, and it's my responsibility, along with the task force commanders, to ensure that everyone is ready to execute those missions. Admiral Davidson did a tremendous job in a very difficult situation to identify the things that we need to do, and we're taking action on every one of the recommendations in the report.
Yeah, very powerful 177-page report, which we discussed with Secretary of the Navy before we came out here. Let me ask you, you're probably one of the most experienced aviators in this building right now, 5,100 flight hours. Nobody else in this building has 1,100 traps, flew a number of legendary naval aircraft, including the F-14, one of the coolest, no offense to anybody else, but for my generation, it was one of the coolest airplanes ever, and also had some relatives out in Bethpage, Long Island that worked on them. Talk to us a little bit about the F-35. You know, there's always sort of a bit of skepticism that's been a little bit lingering in the Navy about the F-35. A very strong preference for the F-18, and you flew the F-18 as well and have a number of hours in that jet. Talk to us about the F-35 as somebody who's on the front line here, what the F-35 is going to mean for the United States Navy in places like this and elsewhere.
Yeah, the fifth generation capability of the F-35 is absolutely needed from our maritime forces. The plan we have built has us able, and our plan is to operate both fourth gen and fifth gen airplanes together in order to meet the mission objectives. So it brings capability that we absolutely need in the maritime, but the combination of both the F-35 and the F-18 we believe will take us there in the future.
Are you satisfied with the integration between the legacy aircraft and the new generation aircraft? Because that's always a challenge when you're looking at, you know, that kind of capability to get that force fusion.
Yeah, at OpNav, again, it's critical that interoperability exists, and we are working towards ensuring that our fourth and fifth gen airplanes can operate together. So it's absolutely critical, and my partners back in the Pentagon are going to ensure that that happens.
Lung Aquilino, Vice Admiral, Commander of the United States Fifth Fleet. Sir, thanks very much. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and hopefully we'll see you out forward.
Thanks, Vago. Good to see you again.